Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to talk about how history is so much weirder than you think. I mean, we're talking about facts so bizarre, they'll make you question everything you thought you knew about the past. Think presidents from the 1700s with grandsons who are alive today, and famous generals getting defeated by, well, rabbits.
All right, let's just dive right in and scramble your sense of time a little bit. We tend to just lump all of ancient Egypt into one big, sandy period in our minds, right? But how much time do you think actually separates its most famous ruler from its most famous landmark?
So get this, the Great Pyramid was already ancient history by the time Cleopatra was born. I mean, ancient history. In fact, she lived about 500 years closer to the 1969 moon landing than she did to the pyramid's construction. It just goes to show you how our mental map of the past can be a total illusion.
You know, some true stories are just too weird for Hollywood. They're so bizarre you couldn't even make them up. Let's look at a few historical events that feel completely made up, but I promise you they are 100% real.
Okay, picture this. The year is 1807. Napoleon Bonaparte, one of the greatest military commanders in history, has just signed a major peace treaty. To celebrate this huge victory, he decides he wants to do something grand. You know, something imperial. He wants to host a massive rabbit hunt.
So his chief of staff gets right on it. He rounds up what you could call an opposing army for this hunt. We're talking over 3,000 rabbits, all caged up and ready to go. The stage was set for a big, impressive display of power.
And this is where it all goes wrong. See, the chief of staff, he wasn't exactly a rabbit expert. So instead of getting wild rabbits, he just bought a bunch of domesticated ones from local farms. And, well, farm rabbits have a very, very different relationship with humans.
When those cages were opened, the rabbits didn't run away. They looked at Napoleon and his men, and they didn't see predators. They saw the guy who brings the food. So this fluffy, hungry horde of 3,000 bunnies charged the emperor. Napoleon, the conqueror of Europe, was completely swarmed. He had to retreat to his carriage, utterly defeated by an army of rabbits.
And if you think a bunny ambush is strange, let's talk about a formally declared war between humans and birds. Back in 1932, Australian farmers were dealing with about 20,000 emus destroying their wheat crops. It got so bad, they called in the military.
So the military shows up with machine guns, right? They're probably thinking, this is going to be an easy win. But the emus, they were brilliant strategists. As one scientist noted, they basically used guerrilla tactics, splitting into small groups and just running circles around the soldiers. After a month of being completely outsmarted, the Australian army officially withdrew. In the Great Emu War, the emus won.
So it's not just that history is weird. A lot of our popular understanding of it is just completely backward. In this next part, we're going to debunk some of the myths that pretty much all of us take for granted.
This is a perfect example. When you think of a pirate ship, what do you picture? Probably some tyrannical captain with an iron fist, ruling over everyone, right? Well, during the golden age of piracy, the truth was often the complete opposite. A lot of pirate ships were basically functioning democracies.
Life on a pirate ship was, believe it or not, surprisingly fair. The captain and the quartermaster, they were elected, and they could be voted out. All the treasure was shared equally. And get this, they even had an early form of disability insurance, setting aside money for any crew members who got injured. The conditions were so much better than on a Navy ship that a lot of captured sailors just willingly became pirates.
Okay, now for a misconception that's probably sitting in your kitchen cabinet right now. That bright red, tomatoey sauce we call ketchup? Yeah, the original version, from way back in 4th century BC China, had no tomatoes at all. It was actually a salty, funky sauce made from fermented fish and mushrooms.
Tomatoes didn't even enter the picture until 1834, and it was an American doctor who added them, not for flavor, but because he thought they had medical benefits. He sold it as a cure for indigestion. This started a whole craze for tomato pills, though most of them were just fakes. The whole medicinal ketchup thing eventually collapsed, but it turns out people had really fallen in love with the taste.
So, like we saw with Cleopatra, the past isn't as far away or as neat and tidy as we think. In fact, a lot of historical eras that seem worlds apart were actually happening at the exact same time.
This one always gets me. We tend to think of the Aztec and Incan civilizations as truly ancient, right? But Oxford University is actually centuries older than both of them. People were teaching and learning at Oxford more than 200 years before the Aztecs even founded their capital city. That just completely rearranges how you picture the ancient world.
Now, here's a fact that is going to absolutely collapse time for you. Let's talk about John Tyler, the 10th president of the U.S. He was born in 1790. That's while George Washington was still in office. Seems like forever ago, doesn't it?
And yet, and this sounds totally impossible, President Tyler has a grandson who is alive right now today. How on earth is that even possible? Well, the secret is a couple of very, very large generational gaps.
It's honestly just a stunning example of how close history really is. President Tyler was 63 years old when his son Leon was born. Then, Leon was 75 when his son Harrison was born in 1928. Just 2 long generations, and you've got a direct link from someone living today all the way back to a man born when George Washington was president.
So after all these strange, surprising, timeline-bending facts, here's the real kicker. All of this stuff comes from the tiny, tiny sliver of human history that we actually know about. Recorded history only covers about 6,000 years, but modern humans, we've been around for at least 200,000 years. That means a staggering 97% of our own story is just lost to time.
And that really leaves you with one final thought, doesn't it? If we could misunderstand so much about the tiny 3% of history that we do have, thinking pirates were tyrants or that ketchup was always red, what on earth are future generations going to get completely wrong about our lives today? What bizarre stories will they be telling about us?